It's easy to forget the things we say when emotions are high, especially when the promises feel small, casual even. I'll be there next time. This year will be different. I'm done with this for good. We make these declarations with conviction in the moment, but somewhere deep inside, we already know we won't follow through. We tell ourselves that it's the thought that counts, that circumstances will justify the failure. And so, the promise fades. Or so we think. You move on. Life keeps moving with or without you. Maybe the person you made that promise to forgets. Maybe they don't. Maybe it was a promise to yourself, one that got buried beneath 100 distractions and just enough excuses to make the guilt manageable. For a while, nothing seems to come of it. You didn't keep your word, but no thunder cracked the sky. No shadow passed through your door. It's as if the universe didn't notice at all. But the universe doesn't record these things. Something else does. There's an old story, half whispered, never written down in full, about a being who listens, not for truths and not for lies, but for intent. He doesn't care about accidents or mistakes. He listens only for the promises made with deliberate breath, the ones you spoke aloud, even if no one else was there to hear them. Especially those. Because intention is a form of power, and in some hidden part of the world, power always draws attention. He's not a demon, not a ghost. He doesn't haunt you in the way you'd expect. There's no scratching at the walls, no figures in your dreams. What he brings is quieter and infinitely more cruel. Because he doesn't punish. He collects. Like a curator of broken vows, he stores the fragments of your discarded words in a place beyond memory, but not beyond consequence. And when the time is right, when you've built enough of a trail behind you, he shows you the cost. Not with fire, not with death, but with a reflection. A vision of who you could have been if you'd simply followed through. If even one of your promises had been kept, your life would have changed. And now, standing before the version of yourself that fulfilled them all, you finally see what was lost. Not taken, just abandoned. That's what makes him different from every other presence we fear. He doesn't need to harm you. You'll do that part yourself. Welcome to Tales from the Forbidden Library. Here, we don't just speak of spirits and curses, but of the stories we write with our own broken words, and the things that come to collect them. In the oldest layers of forgotten folklore, the kind not bound in books, but murmured around fires and etched into bones, there exists a figure no one worships, no one names, and yet almost everyone unknowingly feeds. He is not summoned with incense or chants. He is not called through mirrors or blood. He comes quietly, steadily, through the accumulation of broken intent, not sins, not crimes, but promises. He is known simply as the collector, not of souls, not of spirits, but of words, specifically the ones you abandon, the promises you make when no one is around, the ones you whisper before sleep, the resolutions uttered on a birthday, a deathbed, or a drunken night of regret. These are the threads he follows, and once you've spoken them aloud, they don't just vanish into silence, they get recorded. He doesn't strike when you lie to someone else. It's when you lie to yourself that he begins to pay attention. The collector is not a god, and he isn't a devil. He doesn't dwell in a distant dimension, waiting for souls to weigh. He exists just out of sync with time, in the empty space between the person you are and the person you told yourself you'd become. He is not interested in morality, only in the volume of broken commitments. And once there are enough, once the weight of your discarded intentions tips into something measurable, he begins his approach. People who've felt him describe it not as fear, but pressure, a sense that they are being watched not by eyes, but by expectation. Mirrors don't reflect quite right. Their own voice, heard on a recording sounds unfamiliar, like someone else using their words. One woman claimed that every time she passed a certain window, her reflection mouthed the phrase, "You promised." It doesn't start with hauntings. It starts with memory. You begin to recall the things you said you'd do years ago, sometimes decades, promises that had long dissolved into the fog of the past. And yet suddenly, they reappear with clarity. The exact words, the tone you used, the look in someone's eyes when they believed you. These are not coincidences. These are filings, documents being retrieved from somewhere you never meant to leave them. There are accounts, never made public, of people who encountered the collector directly. A man in Tunisia who said he was approached by a silent figure in a bookstore, one that handed him a receipt with every commitment he'd made since age 12. A school teacher in Prague who stopped speaking entirely after waking up to find her diary filled with entries from a life she never lived, but remembered vividly. The entries stopped on the exact day she had once vowed to become a writer, and never did. He doesn't cause hallucinations. He reveals the ledger. Because what he collects isn't just your words, it's what those words could have shaped. And that's what makes his presence so devastating. He doesn't need to punish you. All he has to do is show you the version of yourself that followed through. And for many, that alone is enough to unravel everything. Those who've seen him say that he carries no tools, no chains, no scythe, just paper, or sometimes a mirror, or a tape recorder that plays your own voice back to you, speaking words you barely remember saying, promises, vows, declarations, each one intact, each one followed by silence, a silence you left behind when you chose comfort over change. And the worst part? He doesn't judge. There is no scorn, no malice, only presence. As if to say, this is what you built, this is what you abandoned. And then he vanishes, but he doesn't take anything with him. He leaves something instead, the unbearable weight of clarity, the kind that doesn't fade with time. Because once you've seen the person you were meant to become and the simple, small promises that could have taken you there, nothing feels real again. Not your excuses, not your regrets, not even your hope. Only the echo of your own voice, still promising to do better. Tomorrow. A single broken promise is nothing. A careless word, a shift in the wind. Even the collector in his silence does not stir for something so small. After all, failure is human. Regret is common. One vow, lost to time, barely registers, but broken promises are never singular. They multiply, they cluster, they form patterns, like footprints around a shallow grave. And when they begin to accumulate, something shifts in the air around you. At first, it's subtle. You begin to feel distant from your own ambitions. You'll look at old journals and feel like a stranger wrote them. You'll hear your own voice in recordings and swear something in the tone sounds empty. You might even feel emotions you can't explain, a sudden weight when passing certain places, or a sharp sadness during moments that should be peaceful. These are signs, not of punishment, but of presence. The collector is watching the ledger grow. What he collects is not paper or sound, it's potential, the unspent currency of your own evolution. Every promise you made and abandoned becomes a piece of a world that could have been and wasn't. One missed opportunity doesn't matter, but 50, 100, that becomes something else entirely. That becomes a you that never existed, but should have. And the collector, more than anything else, is fascinated by what should have been. There are people who've spoken about the moment it tipped. They didn't know it at the time, of course. They only understood later, after it was too late to undo what had been set in motion. One woman recalled dreaming of a home she didn't recognize, filled with books she never read and children she never had. Another man saw himself in a suit he never bought, giving a speech he never wrote. These were not fantasies. They were reflections, fragments of the life that would have formed had he kept the promise to pursue the version of himself he once swore was possible. These visions grow stronger the longer the collector observes. They begin to intrude into waking life. A smell from nowhere. A song you don't remember knowing but somehow can hum. You'll meet strangers who swear they know you. You'll pass places you've never been that still feel like home. These are not accidents. These are the splinters of parallel lives, brushing against yours as the weight of your abandoned words begins to distort the boundaries between what is and what could have been. The collector does not create these anomalies. He simply preserves them. The growing collection forms a kind of echo, an unfinished sentence looping in the background of your soul. It's said that the more promises you leave behind, the more you begin to hear a second version of yourself whispering inside. Not voices, not madness, just a gentle hum of possibility tapping softly at your awareness like rain on glass. The longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. And when the echo becomes unbearable, when the weight of potential threatens to collapse the reality you've settled for, he comes. You won't see him arrive. You won't hear footsteps, but you'll feel time pause, not stop, pause, like the entire room is holding its breath. Light will seem to bend unnaturally. Your own heartbeat might fall out of sync with your surroundings, and then he will be there. Never looming, never imposing, always patient, always still. He will not speak. He has no need to. He simply reveals. Sometimes it's a book with your name on the spine, filled with chapters you never lived. Sometimes it's a mirror that shows a version of your face you no longer recognize. Healthier, bolder, whole. Sometimes it's nothing more than a moment, a second that stretches into eternity, during which you are forced to feel every promise you ever made and broke all at once. Not to shame you, but to complete the record. Because his collection is not finished until you understand what you lost, until the weight of your own discarded words becomes too much to bear. And then, as quietly as he came, he leaves. But the echo doesn't. Most hauntings come with noise, slamming doors, flickering lights, echoes that startle and fade. But what the collector leaves behind is quiet. It doesn't rattle chains or hide in shadows. It lingers in the stillness between who you are and who you were supposed to become. People who've seen him say they didn't know what to expect. Some believed he would punish them, demand something, mark them. But the collector doesn't deal in pain. He deals in understanding. And when the moment comes, when he reveals what he's been storing, you're not met with horror. You're met with yourself. Not the person you see in the mirror every morning, not the tired version you've grown used to, but the one who lived up to every promise you let slip, the one who kept going even when it was hard, even when it was lonely. The version of you who wrote the book, made the call, kept the vow, showed up when it mattered most. That version isn't perfect, but they're true. And standing in front of that truth is not like facing a ghost. It's like facing a stranger who feels like home. Most people try to go back to their lives afterward. They return to their jobs, their families, their daily routines. But nothing feels quite the same. There's a thinness to it all, a hollowness that wasn't there before. They find themselves hesitating before speaking, especially when about to make a promise. They feel the weight of their own words in ways they never noticed before. Something inside them knows. This vow might be added to the collection. Some people try to catch up. They revisit old goals, chase down long abandoned dreams, pick up pieces they left scattered across years. But it rarely brings peace. Because the collector doesn't show you a vision to inspire you. He shows you what's no longer available. What could only exist in the exact moment you gave it up. You can run toward it, try to recreate it, but it will always be a few steps ahead. A version of your life frozen in amber, never moving, always waiting, out of reach. Others do the opposite. They fall quiet, withdrawn, not from depression, but from reflection. They've seen what they were supposed to be, and now the life they're living feels like a compromise. They stop making plans, stop setting goals, not because they've given up, but because they've finally understood how fragile potential really is, and how easily it's lost when you don't honor it. This kind of haunting isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It lingers in subtle ways, in the sound of your voice cracking when you talk about the future, in the way you hesitate before telling someone, "I'll be there." You remember the face you saw in that vision. You remember the weight of the choices you didn't make. And for some, the knowledge is unbearable. But for others, it becomes a quiet form of reverence. They begin to treat words like sacred things. Promises are no longer thrown around like spare change. Even the smallest commitments become deliberate. They don't promise to change overnight. But when they say, "I'll try," they mean it. And meaning it, truly, is a form of redemption. The real curse of the collector is not that he takes anything from you. It's that he leaves you with the knowledge of what you let slip through your own fingers. You see the life you were meant to live. You feel it. And then, you're asked to keep going without it. There's no spell to reverse what he's shown you. No ritual to undo the weight of potential wasted. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the collector isn't a monster at all. Maybe he's a mirror. One that only appears when the gap between who you are and who you could have been becomes too wide to ignore. And once you've looked into that mirror, you can never unsee what's on the other side. Most stories about supernatural encounters leave room for escape. You run, you hide, you survive. But this isn't one of those stories. The collector doesn't chase you through corridors or appear in mirrors with blood in his eyes. He doesn't need to. His power lies not in fear, but in revelation. And once he has shown you what you could have been, what you were meant to become, the haunting doesn't begin with him. It begins with you. What makes his presence so devastating is the quiet. No screaming warnings, no dramatic curses. Just the undeniable truth of your own discarded potential, laid bare before you like a reflection you never knew you needed to see. It's not the loss that wounds. It's the knowledge that the loss came from your own hand. The dream wasn't stolen. It was simply neglected. After an encounter with the collector, life does not resume as before. You might sit at the same desk, speak to the same people, live in the same home, but something feels slightly out of sync, like you've stepped sideways into a version of your life that's just a few degrees off course. And no matter how hard you try to adjust, to play your role again, you feel it in your chest. The heavy presence of what could have been pressing against your ribs like a memory trying to breathe. Some people spend years trying to silence that awareness. They drown it in distractions, in busyness, in comfort. Others embrace it, trying to rebuild something new from the ashes of their broken promises. But whether they run from it or run toward it, they are changed, not by punishment, but by perspective. Because when you've seen yourself in your highest form and felt the absence of that version, you don't forget. You don't move on, you carry it. That's the brilliance of the collector's curse. It's not dramatic. It doesn't destroy you in one moment. It lingers, quiet, persistent, and alive inside every choice you make afterward. And while he may never return, his influence will. In the pause before a commitment, in the weight of your own voice when you say, "I will." In the question that now echoes inside you, "Will I really?" You won't find him in rituals or texts. There's no name to invoke, no seal to ward him off. He exists in the margin between desire and discipline, between intention and action. And he waits, not to strike, but to show you, when the time comes, what was once possible and what was lost not to fate, but to you. So, if you ever feel that shift, when silence grows heavy, when your own words echo louder than before, understand this: you are not being haunted by a stranger. You are being haunted by the self you were supposed to become. And that, above all else, is the one presence you can never truly escape.